In today's show, the Blazers get one of the most entertaining wins over the season, taking down the Brooklyn Nets at the Moda Center. Anfernee Simons shows his growth, and the Blazers gave us a little bit of joy in what looked like a certain loss on the way to Tanktown. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? Past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. We're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and now also on YouTube. If you're listening to my voice, please go subscribe to the YouTube channel. I would truly, truly appreciate it. In today's show, talk about one of the most entertaining wins of the season. I don't know if it's Blazers' best win of the season, but it was certainly one of the most fun. The Blazers beat the Brooklyn Nets. The heavily shorthanded Blazers beat most of the Brooklyn Nets in a game that I don't think many saw coming. It was a ton of fun. We'll talk all about that. And then I want to close the show a little bit talking about trade season. We're basically a month out from the trade deadline, and I think there's reason to believe that this will be a very active one, and we will talk about that to close the show. But let's spend some time enjoying a fun Blazers win, because that's absolutely what this was. We'll do our fastest recap in the West, and we'll talk about all we need to know about this game. Let's do what we do, though. Fastest recap in the West. Blazers win 114-108. They led by 7 after 1, 33-26. Kind of rolling early. Offense looked good, got some good energy plays, rolling early, up 7, but the second quarter was all Brooklyn. Nets outscored the Blazers 36-22 in the second quarter, took a 7-point lead into the break. Kyrie Irving had 14 points at halftime. That's right, Kyrie Irving playing in his second game. A road participants playing in this one. Looked good, kind of, not sort of vintage Kyrie, but a darn good basketball player, and the Nets led by 7 at the break. But the Blazers came out of halftime with either their hair on fire or just playing better, whether you'd like a euphemism or a more straightforward approach. They outscored the Nets 32-19 in that third quarter, behind 9 points from Anfernee Simons, 9 points from Robert Covington, and took a 6-point lead into the break. It was a back and forth game, and the Blazers would not relinquish that lead in the fourth quarter, up 87-81 heading into the fourth. Nets cut it down to 4 twice in the final 3 minutes, but the Blazers held on each time. First with a 3 from Covington, second with a floater from Anfernee Simons, then finally, 54 seconds left, Blazers have the ball up 5. They're inbounding from the baseline, and this is it. Like, the Nets are going to have a real opportunity, and they're going to have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving when if they have this real opportunity. It's going to get scary for a shorthanded Blazers team is going to hold on for a special win. And what do? Ben McLemore cans a 3 to put the Blazers up 8 and kind of ice this one. It was a huge shot, arena going nuts. And the Blazers hold on to win 114-108 thanks to that Benny Mac shot and more. That's your fastest recap in the West. Anfernee Simons led the Blazers with 23 points and a career-high 11 assists. Robert Covington added 21 points. Hit 5 3-pointers, 3 steals, 3 blocks to go with 4 rebounds. Nazir Little, 13 points and 5 boards. Nurk, 14 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. Blazers got some nice play off the bench. CJ Elleby finished with 9 points and 5 rebounds. I thought Dennis Smith Jr. had a really nice night off the bench with 6 and 3 dimes. Trendon Watford, one memorable play knocking the ball out of Kevin Durant's hands, and a bunch of just like little hustle stuff. More had to be there, but 4 points, 6 boards, and a block for Trendon Watford in 14 minutes off the bench. Kevin Durant had 28 on the other side to go with 10 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals. Kevin Durant is good, worth the price of admission for those of you who braved the trip to Moda Center. Kyrie Irving, 22 points, but just 8 in the second half for that 14-point first half. He was hot early, but didn't really have it down the stretch. Cam Thomas came off the bench, 21 points for the Nets. And Day'Ron Sharpe, where'd he go to college? Look him up, 14.7 boards for Day'Ron. You knew he was making the recap. Shout out to Tar Heel Legends. Just a straight up great win. Like, We'll talk a lot about it, but like my first thoughts is just like a straight up great win. One of the most entertaining, unlikely games that you could possibly see coming. A Blazers start: Ant, Ben McLemore, Nas, Rocco, and Nurk. That's no CJ, no Norm, no Damian Lillard, who's off getting his his abs checked out. No Larry Nance Jr. in this one. The bench is basically Trendon Watford, Dennis Smith Jr., Cody Zeller, and CJ Ellaby. Like that team just beat Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Super, super, super fun. I want to talk all about Anfernee Simons in the second segment because this game for me was the biggest sort of growth that he's had. Like this was the game that kind of made me say like, oh, like this is a dude who's really figuring it out because he didn't shoot well. And we'll talk about more of that. And I thought Chauncey Billups had an interesting note he shared with reporters in his post game presser. But like what I came away from this game thinking was, there's, let's go Blazers chants in the closing minutes of this one, and an arena excited, and it's in a season where I think the preference of many fans has shifted, and the preference would be just like go ahead and lose because who cares? And I don't even think that's I think that's fair. Like, I think it's like a reasonable way to maybe think about this team is that losses and development are more valuable than wins. Like the Blazers now won 3 and 2 in their last 5 games. Wins over a Hawks team that's scuffling, a Kings team that's just straight up bad, and then this Nets team. So it's not like they're not world beaters, right? And they've and even that Kings game on Sunday night, they didn't look particularly good in that first half, but like a win's a win. They've won 2 in a row, but this one came out of nowhere and was joyful. And I think there's a whole sort of like tank commander squad or whatever you want to call it, like folks who are just sort of like pro losing. And I why I maybe against that a little bit, or at least in the moment, like I understand it as a development tactic. I'm not anti-tanking. I get it. Like, yes, the Blazers would be better off with like the fourth pick in the draft or whatever, third pick in the draft, if otherwise, like then giving the draft away and finishing eighth, like duh. But the joyful moment, like to see these guys have so much fun, to see Robert Covington swear on the broadcast when in post game interview with Brooke Olzendam, when Brooke asked Rocco, like, what'd you say at the end of the game? And he said, great effing win. And then just for good measure, in case Brooke didn't hear it, he said it again on live TV, great effing win. He drops 2 F-bombs. You're not getting F-bombs. You're not getting the excitement with a loss. Players don't tank, so it's not like Rocco's going to turn around, but like, I think there's something to be said for appreciating there'll be some losses down the line. You can believe it. Whatever. They have 16 wins. I guess 66 losses still certainly out there still to be had. But like there's joy to be found in this game. There's like if you're rooting for losses, to me in the sort of very narrow, acute moments of a Monday evening in the Moda Center, a Monday evening on your couch, wherever you might have watched it, like to find joy in this team winning this game, you have to be able to find it. You have to be able to find it because it was fun. Like this was legitimately, if not their best win of the season, certainly in their most fun. Like I still think the win over the Phoenix early in the year and the win over the Bulls a little bit later on are like better wins than this. The Nets' second night of a back-to-back flew all the way across the country, the longest back-to-back road trip in the history of the sport. Yeah, it's a lot going on, right? But but like this was joyous to see Ant and see Trendon Watford and Dennis Smith and Rocco and Nurk and Nas and Benny Mac and Ben McLemore, like that crew beat this team that's like was without LaMarcus Aldridge and without without Joe Harris for the whole season, without James Harden, who was like a day of scratch. He was expected to play this game in day of scratch. Like certainly it's not the whole Nets team. This is most of the damn Nets team. And the Blazers took it to them, and then when they were down in the heading into halftime, they didn't let go of the rope. They found a way to have a good third quarter and put themselves in control, and they didn't give up the lead in the fourth quarter. Made shots when they needed to. Rocco hit a big one. Ant hit a nice little runner, and then Ben McLemore hit the big one, and you hold on and win. Like, there'll be plenty of time for them to lose and plenty of time to chase draft picks. But like tonight, or if you're listening to this tomorrow morning, dear listener, dear Blazer fan, like hold on to this joy. This was a fun game, and there's nothing wrong with having fun. So I like implore you to say like to look at this game and not say like, oh man, there goes Chet Holmgren or whatever. Oh no, there's Paolo Banchero. He's gone. He's gone. There's Jabari Smith. Like, nah, screw it. Enjoy this one. Enjoy it for what it was. A fun game and one of the most entertaining games of the Blazers season. It's okay just to it's not okay. It's more than okay. I'm not scolding. I'm saying please, I'm asking, please enjoy this one because it was a ton of fun. It's worth enjoying it because it was a ton of fun. Like this was an entertaining game. But there was some moments from this game I want to talk about in the second segment. Something Chauncey Billups mentioned to open his presser, and then just the growth of Anfernee Simons. 23 points and 11, a career high 11 assists. This was a big game for Ant, a special game for Ant. And we'll talk about that in the second segment. Before we get there, though, let me tell you about BetOnline.ag. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action, whatever that sports action is. You want to bet the Blazers to win a big upset? You could have won a whole bunch of money by going to BetOnline.ag and betting them just straight up money line to beat the Nets. Prior to the game, BetOnline had them as 8.5-point dogs, and the Blazers ended up not only covering but rolling, baby. Yeah, rolling to a 6-point win. I said it. It's a place to make money. More lines, more props than any other spot you're going to find. It's betonline.ag, not just basketball, football, soccer, anything you want, or even your favorite Vegas casino game. So go over there right now. Head over to that website, betonline.ag. Put in the promo code Locked On. You get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It's a 50% welcome bonus when you use the promo code Locked On at betonline.ag. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Blazers beat the Nets in one of the most entertaining games of the year. Let me take you a little bit inside. I had a whole different show. I thought the Blazers were going to get smoked a little. I thought they might get walloped, mollywopped, steamrolled, whatever you call it, or just straight up beat by a team that's better than they are. The Nets came into this one 14-3 on the road. Like and they have Kyrie Irving now. It's like this is a very good basketball team, a team that could very well win the NBA championship. I'm not going to pick them. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But like a team that very well could win the NBA championship, faux show. And the Blazers win, and they kind of. I had a different plan. I had a different plan heading into the night, and they surprised me. So I'm thankful too. We'll maybe punt a little bit of that plan for later in the week. We're still going to talk about it, but this middle segment wasn't supposed to be about Anfernee Simons. You know what Anfernee Simons did? He made sure it was. Anfernee Simons went 2 for 11 from 3 tonight. One of those was a late shot clock heave. One of them was an end of quarter heave. So 2 of 9 from 3 in like non-heaves, right? Shout out to Ben Falk. That's not a good shooting night. Hell, 3 of 9 is not a particularly good shooting night for Ant. But for my money, since Norman Powell has been out, and when it's been the Anfernee Simons show as the guy who's going to be the number one option, he was 1A with Norm when Norm was here, but like without Norm, it's Ant, and he has to get everybody going. This was the most impressive game that I have watched Ant play during the stretch as the guy, which quite frankly makes it the most impressive game I've ever watched him play, period. This was the most impressive performance of Anfernee Simons I've ever seen from him. A week ago, he had 43 points against the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm telling you right now, tonight was better. 10 of 24 and 23 points. The box score is not going to do it to you. You're just not going to see it. This was a game where you had to watch him go through it, because the box score scout isn't going to give you the real truth. I was preaching out in yesterday's show is that I want to see the little stuff from Ant, and the little stuff was absolutely here. Got himself into the paint, just got into the paint and was a menace. Got his in-between game going, his little floaters and pull-ups were going, his mid-range game was on. Didn't get to the rim very much. Had one absurd finish in the first half where he kind of jumped up and got caught, spun around, threw it over his head, and won as he kind of 360'd but shot it in the middle of the 180. Incredible finish. I mean, he was really special, and to be this good when he wasn't shooting well is special. And that's not even to mention the 11 assists, a career high. Assists are kind of a little bit misleading when it comes to passing, because I thought Nurk had a really good passing game. This one he only had 3 assists, and he had some really good passes early in the game that kind of out of the post. Which, they were better passes, but they didn't lead to anything in the box score. But they're like good, smart cross court reads from Nurk. So it's not always a great judge, but this was a great judge for Ant. I thought he made good decisions. I thought he got into the paint and found guys on the weak side, or just simple. You get into the paint, a help comes, kick to Nazir Little with his feet set, and Naz hits it. Naz with his feet set, a pretty good shooter. Naz without his feet set, a truly bad one. But it's like Ant getting those advantages, getting into the paint, and all those things. This was the most impressive game I've ever seen him play as a pro. So hats off to Ant. An interesting thing, though, in his post-game press conference, Chauncey Billups mentioned that when early in the season, when he was trying to tell Ant to how to make an adjustment, Ant might not see it in game. And that was pretty interesting. And that they would have to watch it together on film the next day, and then he'd be able to say, okay, you see what I'm saying here? This is what it is. And now that Ant is playing so much and he has such a good feel for what the defenses are going to do, they can have a conversation right away and kind of fix it mid-game, fix it midstream. And he could say hey, here's the thing you want to do. And Anfernee Simons mentioned that he basically, starting with the game against the Heat, so he had 43 against the Hawks, got everyone's attention. Starting with that game, he's gotten just a ton of defensive attention over the last 4 games. And some of that defensive attention has allowed him to be a little bit, to feel and get a sense for how defenses are going to guard him, and then how they're going to guard his counters, and then how they're going to counter his counters. And it's the stuff that if you have the ball in your hands and you're running a cajillion pick and rolls and you're initiating the offense and you're on the head of the scouting board, that you have an opportunity to get. You will get that feel, and something that you can't duplicate, because being the top of the scouting report, being you can't prepare for that without playing. This is you need the reps as the guy, as the person they're trying to stop, to sort of know what it's like to be the person they're trying to stop. Watching tape of Dame is not the same as dragging out a pick and roll, because you know that the help will come here, and if help comes here, it's like those you can't make those reads. You can see those reads, but the feel for making those reads you can't get without the opportunity that Ant's had the last 4 games. And he talked about that. And I asked Billups about kind of what those reads are, right? He talked about it a little bit, and then I asked a follow up, can you give us a sense of what those reads are? And Billups gave an example of early in the season. Simons was having a trouble kind of making that little pocket pass. So when he comes off the pick and roll and the big is up, and there's that little gap, the pocket between where the big rolls into, where Nurk rolls into on a pick and roll, that Ant was having trouble making that pass. The defender defending the pick and roll's hand was often in the way, and Ant was just was turning the ball over, not making that read. And what Chauncey was telling him was hey, you got to read his hand, read the big's hand, because he's going to try to be in the passing lanes. And if he's high, you got to go low quickly. And if he's low, you got to fake low to keep him low and then go high. You got to make that read. But it's not like you can stop. That's an instantaneous feel thing. And on tape, Ant was able to see it. But now that he's playing all the time, that read is natural. And Chauncey can say, hey, he's doing this, and they can make it quickly. Ant says that he would ask Chauncey questions like, hey, if a big is sagging off, but he's not dropped all the way back, what's a move I can do to kind of freeze him and get my jumper off? And they could talk about those type of things. And now he's getting an opportunity to see that 6, 8, 12 times in a game and really take steps forward. And I think we've really seen it. And on a night, he hit 7 threes against the Kings, right? 31 points and hit 7 threes. And it's damn, this dude is good. And I thought he was better tonight when he was 2 of 11 from deep, because the shot wasn't going. The 3-point shot, which is such a huge part of his arsenal, wasn't going. And he was still the Blazers' best offensive player by a mile. This was a great Ant game. I came away really impressed. One other thing from Chauncey's presser I just want to mention. He opened his press conference by saying, it's the question's what'd you like about the game tonight? And he says, just love the way we fought. And he's kind of going into kind of just hey, we played hard, and the guys played great type of answer. And he, somewhere in that answer, he started talking about player development, and he gave specific shout out to Adnisha Curry, and Mark Tyndale, who are Mark Tyndall is, I believe he's like a video guy. For my money, he's an assistant coach. He's not listed as an assistant coach, but he sits behind the bench and he works out with guys before games. Like, to me, that's an assistant coach. Maybe he's technically a scouting department type of person, but he's one of Billups' assistants. And Anisha Curry is an assistant coach. And specifically mentioned Tyndall and Coach Tyndall and Coach Curry about their development or their work with CJ Ellaby and their work with Trendon Watford and the grind that they put in to kind of get those guys ready. And, Ellaby hit one big three in the second half and had a great little lefty floater that he put up over Kevin Durant, which will be, I'm sure, something he remembers for a long time. And Trendon Watford had one play out on the wing where he harassed Kevin Durant above the 3-point line, knocked the ball out of Durant's hands and off him out of bounds for a turnover. Those are like little moments that I remember because I'm a Trendon Watford fan and I'm watching him closely, but like Billups, with sort of unprompted, credited his assistants, credited those guys, and talks about sort of the satisfaction of seeing guys grind and seeing them grind with his staff and then have contributions. And I don't think there's nothing big here, but what I want to mention is I really like when coaches do that. I really like when coaches single out their assistants. Assistant coaches don't get a lot of shine. I thought it was something that Terry Stotts almost never did, and it frustrated me a little bit because there were times when he would say, "We as a staff did a good job," or I appreciate my staff," and it was a great time to say that person's name, to say Anisha Curry, to say Mark Tyndall, to say these specific people helped, because there's it's a lot that goes into player development stuff and making young guys in the basketball team who don't play very often better behind the scenes. So I thought it was cool of Billups to do that. So I just wanted to note that here. I mentioned it on my Twitter account, but I wanted to mention it in the space because this podcast is better than my Twitter account, and in many ways more important, significantly more important to me. So I wanted to make sure I made that note here. In the third segment, I want to shift gears a bunch, like hard right turn. Blazers win this game, fun game, enjoyable, blah, blah, blah. But I want to shift a little bit. I think there's going to be a bunch of trades at the trade deadline, and we're a month out. Let's talk about why there's going to be a bunch of trades at the trade deadline. That's what we'll do to close the show. So join me there in the third segment. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still listen to Locked On Blazers. Talk about the most fun win of the season. Talk about Ant's excellence. Now I want to talk about trade deadline. It's coming up February 10th. I'm recording this in the evening of January 10th after the Blazers game. There's reason to believe that it's going to be a very active trade deadline. This was first pointed out to me. Quite frankly, it was first pointed out to me, if I'm really giving credit where credit is due, by listener Dr. J, who 3 months ago, maybe longer, sent me a note saying that, hey, there's not a lot of teams have cap space this summer, Mike. And because there's not a lot of teams have cap space, maybe there'll be, an active trade market, and maybe Yusuf Nurkic will garner a bunch of trade interest because not a lot of teams can afford to pay him this summer if he hits the open market because no one's going to have the cap space to do so, blah, 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 blah. You nailed it, Dr. J. And in fact, earlier this week, I saw Keith Smith, who writes for Yahoo Sports and Celtics blog and a bunch of other places, and a CBA expert and somebody who's super plugged in. Keith Smith mentioned that on his Twitter feed that he had talked to a couple people around the league who thought maybe because of a weak free agent crop and a very few teams with cap space, that it could be that people around the league were speculating it could be an active trade market because, one, teams aren't going to have cap space this summer, and two, there's no reason to try to get cap space this summer because it's kind of a weak free agent crop. So I want to dig into the specifics of that and why I think that could be beneficial for the Blazers real quick to close the show. So there's only right now, as we sit here today in January, 4 teams projected to have cap space this summer. That means 26 teams will operate as over the cap teams. That means there's just not a lot of money out there to be had for free agents. It's most teams offering, mid-level exceptions and taxpayer mid-level exceptions, et cetera, et cetera. Guys, there aren't max cap slots and all that. There's not a lot of max guys either on the going to hit the open market this summer. But as of right now, only the Detroit Pistons, Orlando Magic, San Antonio Spurs, and Memphis Grizzlies are projected to have any amount of cap space this summer. Just 4 teams in the league. The Pistons are, in Orlando, are very unlikely to sign big name free agents. They're in a rebuild. They're going to take, incremental steps. San Antonio, very unlikely to sign a big name free agent because that's not what they've basically ever done, except one time when they signed Richard Jefferson in 2005 or whenever that was, 2007. It's just not going to, it's not going to happen. Memphis, I don't know. They're really good. Maybe they do spend some big money, but maybe they spend that money to, keep their books clean because they know gonna have to pay John Morant a whole bunch of money, and looks like we have to pay Desmond Bain a whole bunch of money too because he's balling. And but like regardless, there's 4 teams with cap space, and 3 of them are very unlikely to be players in free agency, and that'll certainly play into the sort of what happens here in the next couple of weeks. The free agent class, like, are other teams going to position themselves, try to shed salary, maybe send some big contracts over to Detroit and Orlando and San Antonio and position themselves? I don't think so. The free agent class is pretty bad. Not that these players are bad. It's just like the biggest name on the free agent class is probably Kyrie Irving and Zach LaVine. Kyrie Irving had a very confusing free agent saga. Like I was going to say, I don't think he's going to make a bunch of money. He might. He's very, very good. But obviously his vaccination status is like a part-time player this year. It's very, you wouldn't want to, he wouldn't garner a max contract if the rules remain the same that they are in the municipality of specifically New York City. Like the Nets can't give him a giant deal if he can't play there. And that's like a legal thing for the city of New York, not really, certainly not specific to the Nets or the NBA. Zach LaVine is very likely to re-sign with Chicago. So Brad Beal could opt out and become a free agent. And then it's like Jonas Valanciunas, Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Anderson, DJ Warren, Nurk, Robert Covington. Like they're up there and like sort of like more appealing free agents. It's not a strong class. So, to sort of Keith Smith's logic and Dr. J's logic. Shout out to Dr. J. That's why you send me an email, because I will read them and I will remember them. And if I can't work it into the mailbag, I might just give you a shout out some months later, Dr. J. If you're listening, appreciate you. So I think this bodes well for the Blazers for a couple different reasons. One, frothy trade market. That means they're going to have some suitors for who they're trying to trade. And, the Blazers won 3 of 5, 2 in a row. This game was awesome, but it doesn't change the long-term outlook. And so I was like, enjoy the game, because like, if you're in favor of tanking, they're going to lose a whole bunch in the near future. Like, don't worry, y'all. It's a talent league. They're like the sort of the long-term and short-term outlook just haven't dramatically changed. So I think this is good news for him. And it's good news for a variety of reasons. One, more activity means it might allow other teams are going to be willing to trade, because the best way for them to acquire talent and move talent is going to be through the trade market. If nobody has cap space and nobody has cap space, no one has reason to acquire cap space, the way that you're going to acquire talent, the way you're going to move talent around is going to be through trades. It's going to be through trades at the trade deadline and then around the draft. Like that seems to be, for me, that seems to be the direction that the next few months are headed. But particularly as February 10th trade deadline approaches, teams are, I think it's very likely it'll be a very active trade deadline, specifically because of the weak free agent class and the lack of cap space projected this summer. And potentially teams are going to position themselves for, let's take on a little bit of money in the summer of 2023, then we'll be ready for it. GMs are thinking longer term than podcasters. But I will say that many fans, there's a lot of information publicly available. There are plenty of you out there, I'm sure, in Blazerland who are thinking about the summer of 2023, because that's the nature of fans. I love it. But I think that means there'll be a market for Yusuf Nurkic, who is, a big old strong center with some passing chops, who can score a little bit in the post. Struggles to finish, is not a super quick lateral defender, but like is an above average starter at his position. The Charlotte Hornets would be a massive upgrade for them to acquire Yusuf Nurkic. Apologies to my man Mace in your face, Mason Plumlee. But like, I think there could be a market for Nurk, because like, starting quality player who you can get, and if you have the right, he'll be a restricted free agent. You mean you have the right to pay him, and you can go over the salary cap to do so. So the right to pay Nurk in a summer, as Dr. J pointed out, with very little cap space and a weak free agent class, the right to pay Nurk is actually more appealing to teams. So even if he's not going to help now, if a team looks like, hey, this is part of our future, Nurk is really appealing. Same kind of deal with Robert Covington. He's been really good as of late. He's kind of like putting it together. He's had a couple solid games in a row. Like, I don't think like 3 good games in a row like drastically changes Covington's trade value, but I think he was really good, like legitimately very good last year, was really down to begin this year. And then he's kind of like putting it together the last couple games. You know, he had 17 that loss against Cleveland and then 21 tonight. He's hitting multiple 3-pointers. He's had 3 blocks and 3 steals in back-to-back games. Like, again, like the like near term doesn't really like change his trade value, but like he's proving he can still do it to some extent. And I think that's worth like noting, right? And I think the same thing, the right to pay Robert Covington. Is he a role player you could see some value in, and you want to make sure because you don't have cap space that you have him on your books at the trade deadline, so then in the summer you can trade for him. I think there's value there. I think conceivably there could be value for CJ McCollum, although he's got more money and longer years on his contract. But if other teams don't have a way to move big contracts, there could be some real activity at the trade deadline. There's reason to believe that it's very active, and very active helps the Blazers, a team that needs to be active and needs to improve this roster, or at least needs to move some parts around and think about next year, because the Blazers' plan is still to be good with Damian Lillard over the next, 2-3 seasons. And so being able to get value back for Nurk and Rocco in a market that is maybe going to be active. Obviously, you can use frothy again, but we'll drop that one. It's like an active trade market, a busy trade market. Like that has value for the Blazers. So there's reason to be optimistic. I'm kind of surprised that things haven't totally picked up in Blazer land, but trade wise, but I still think a trade for Rocco and trade for Nurk could like literally happen. Certainly could happen anytime in the next month because that's when the trade deadline is. But like soon, I think. And I think there's reason to believe, based on what I've laid out here in this to close the show, is that like other teams could be active because it makes more sense for most teams around the league if they're trying to improve their rosters to be active in the trade market. There's incentive for nearly every team in the league to get active, make moves, and because this is the way you're going to upgrade and change your roster over the coming months, just because of lack of cap space, lack of appealing free agents, and et cetera, et cetera. That's going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's show is going to be a mailbag show. I'm recorded on Tuesday evening, January 11th. So if you're listening to this before 8 p.m. on Pacific time, January 11th, shoot me an email, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, or tweet at me at Mike G. Rich. I'll also send out a tweet. So if you're following me on Twitter, if you just check my Twitter feed, you'll see me send out a tweet at Mike G. Rich, and I'll ask for questions. You can respond there. We answer listener submitted questions all episode long. We do it each week. The mailbag's a ton of fun. So if you want to get involved, that's how you do it. Do me a favor. Tell your friends about this podcast. Just tell them they can get it wherever they already get podcasts, and we will be right there waiting for them. We're also on YouTube. If you're listening this deep in the episode, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.